Welcome to MN Toolbox. Today we're going to be working on this Porsche Cayenne 958 body style V8. So it's Cayenne S 2012. It's experiencing a rough idle. So whenever the engine is running going down the highway, no problem. It's nice and smooth. Whenever you pull up to a stoplight, it starts to idle quite roughly, almost to the point of conking out. I've seen a lot of people asking about this out on the forums, and I haven't seen any videos out there of how to replace the variable valve timing solenoid, and there's actually 4 of them on the car. We've already done on this particular car, we just got done doing all plugs and coil packs, as well as the upper camshaft sensors on both sides. There was one that was bad on the right bank, which is the passenger side, and I went ahead and did left bank just as a preventative maintenance. On these particular cars, this body style, the variable valve timing solenoid is in the back here. It's extremely easy to replace. It's one bolt. You just have to take off a bunch of the outer components, the shell, take off the cover for the spark plugs. On the right bank, you do have to kind of move some hoses around, but it's not really a big deal. And you have to take off the torsion strut over here, so that just get that out of the way. But it's one bolt. You pull it off, you pop it back in. The only thing that you want to be super careful of is that when you take out the old part, there's a little tiny O-ring that can be left in the hole. So you want to take like a dental tool or your pinky finger or something and put it in there and gently scoop that O-ring out, because the last thing you want to do is double ring it, and then you'd have a problem. I didn't bother to shoot a separate video on the replacement of the upper camshaft timing sensor, because I've seen other ones that are out there on the internet. But today I believe that we're dealing with the rough idle. I think we're dealing with the VVT solenoid, the variable valve timing. On these cars, there are 4 of them, 2 on each bank, left and right bank. So the one that a lot of people talk about, which is the variable valve timing solenoid, which is underneath these little connectors up here in the front. Let me get this off of here. That's this guy. Get that in there. Here we go. This, you have to take the valve cover off to get this one out. Not a big deal. It's just a valve cover, a couple of bolts. Make sure that you buy all the new O-rings when you put it back on. You wouldn't want to put it back on with the old O-rings. And then there's one on each side of the engine. And then there is the variable valve lift solenoid, which is also referred to as VVT, which is extremely confusing. And there's one on each side down, and you get it from underneath the engine. The right bank, which is the passenger side, can be a little more tricky because you might have to pull the air pump out in order to get at it. After doing a little research, it seems that you can get at it through the passenger side wheel well. The left bank, which is the one that I believe we're having the problem with right here, I'm going to pull the codes again with my ODP2 reader. But I think that this one is fairly straightforward, and all you have to do is pop off the bottom, panel that you would on the bottom of the car when you change your oil. Get up in there, pull it off, a little oil comes out, pop it back on. But let me pull the ODB2 codes, make sure that we're on the right sensor, and I'll be right back with you in a minute. All right, after plugging in the ODB2 reader, I've got several codes that have popped in. As you can see in the upper right-hand corner, there are 7 of them total. And it's basically a repetition of the P, which stands for Porsche, 1373. So I called my friend out in Reno who works at a dealership, had him double check it to make sure that I was correct. And it is the variable valve timing lift solenoid. So let me go and order the part, be a couple of days, and I will be back on for the next section. All right, so also just to double check, I did take it into my local specialty shop to make sure that I had the right code and exactly what it was. They pulled the codes also, and the repeated P1373 is the valve lift control on bank 2. So I'm gonna now go and get this part, and we will look at replacing it. So I'll be right back. All right, so we have the genuine Porsche replacement part. Took a couple of days to come in. This is the number for that. That is the 948105. 30802 or 03. This is an upgraded part. The original one should be an 02 on the end. When we pull, it'll look just like this. Let's get this out of here. Here it is here. Then the old part will have, got to make sure, by the way, when we pull out that we get this little seal with it. So if it's not on the part, I'm going to get in there with a little dental pick and make sure I get this out, because I don't want to end up with two of them and then double seal it. But the original one doesn't have the screen on the bottom, and it will have a red seal on it. This runs off of your oil, so it's they will wear out. It's just a wear item. You don't see a lot of them go out, but it will cause an awful idle. A lot of people are all over the place trying to figure out what it is. There's 4 of these on the car, and all of them are referred to as VVT solenoid, so variable valve timing solenoid. There's the variable valve lift, which is the one in the back, which is what this one is, and then there's the variable valve that runs off of the camshaft on the front, which is those ones that I showed just a minute ago. So I've had a lot of people say, hey, they're super expensive, we replaced the wrong one. You know, they're $600-700. I did call the Porsche dealership. They quoted me $900 to replace this. And with the specialty shop, they quoted me $500. So that's a fairly big difference. But I believe, from doing a little research, that this is an extremely simple replacement, and I can do it myself. I purchased this part, genuine Porsche, off the internet, and it cost me $120. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this in. It does run off of your oil. A lot of people say if you don't change your oil often, it will clog up these holes in these screens, causing this little plunger apparatus inside of here to not function properly. But the purpose of this is to read, uses the oil, and it reads the revolutions of the engine, and it sets your idle when you come to a stoplight. So if this isn't functioning right, the car will idle roughly whenever you're just sitting. You can take a battery and pop the 2 terminals on here. I saw one video on this that was from, I think it was from Mexico, and they were talking about popping some electrical on here and seeing if the actuator works. And I also had somebody that said, well, pull it out and clean it. Quite frankly, I would rather just replace the part with a new one rather than going through the effort of pulling it out and cleaning it. Oil will come out of the engine when this is removed. So you want to have the next one ready with the right orientation, because it is different right here. We'll look at it when we get inside. But you want to have this new part ready so that when the old part comes out, you can put this right in and just lose a small amount of oil. Otherwise, optimally, it would be great if you could replace this when you were doing an oil change, so that you wouldn't have to worry about that. But the one thing that I want to absolutely, I'm going to reiterate this again, I want to make absolutely sure that I get this O-ring, this little seal O-ring right here, off on the old one. So I'm actually going to run it through a strainer, and then I'm going to plug the hole for just a second, make sure I have that O-ring and it's not still stuck in there, because again, I don't want to have an O-ring with another O-ring. That would be problematic. Be back with you in a minute. I'm going to climb underneath the car, and we're going to remove the undercarriage, just the panel that that's underneath there for changing the oil, and then see if we can locate this. I believe I know exactly where it is, and then we'll try to shoot a little bit of a video on the replacement portion. Be right back. All right, we're under the car, 10mm socket. Pull off all these bolts right here. There is one up inside of here on each side of this little undercarriage protectant component piece here. I do this all the time when I change my oil, so it's not a big deal. These will pop right off. One thing that you want to be cognizant of is that in the back here, there's 2 bolts with a little bracket and a tail. And I've watched repetitively where shops, they'll go to change your oil or whatever, and they'll take all these bolts out, and then that has nothing to support this whole big long piece. And so it flops down, clunk, onto the ground, and then snaps off that tail back there. So I make sure that I have that in the back loosened up, and I support this with either my hand or something else when I take these remaining 3 bolts out underneath the front. And then I slide it forward and out of that, and then gently set it on the ground so it doesn't snap that tail off. Because if you snap the tail off, then this whole thing will just sit here and flap underneath your car. And I've seen a ton of Cayennes, especially going down the road, and you can see it flapping around underneath their car, and I know exactly what happened. That was somebody went to go do an oil change, and they didn't take off that back tail. So I'm going to take these off. I don't know if I need to pull this off or not. I might just take a jack stand and stick it underneath there just to hold it up. But I'll be back in just a minute when this is all removed. All right, so we're underneath the engine, back behind the brace for the undercarriage portion. Here's your exhaust coming up here. You can see this is the driver's side, aka bank 2. That's our target up in there. So there's the guy right there. And it's easy to identify because it's right below this piece right up in here. You'll have to take out this screw and the one on top. It's an extremely unpleasant location. It looks like it'd be really easy if you had it on, if you had it up on a lift. You could probably get your arm right up in there and you only got to take out 2 screws and pop that wiring harness off and just shove the new one in. So it's just in a icky location, that's all. I'm going to try and get at this and see if I can do it. I'll let you know what procedure I've come up with in just a minute. But first has to come off that wiring harness, and then we'll address the 2 screws, that one and the upper one. All right, so here, it's like you have to have monkey arms. You can get once you've loosened the 2 screws, and in a minute I'll show you what I had to do to get the upper screw out. You can loosen these 2 up. I'm just pulling mine out with my fingers. Then I'm going to pull out, sorry you can't see it very well, the sensor. I'm going to make sure that I get, again, the O-ring with it. And I have a little dental pick that I'll make sure that I have it if I don't see it drop or it doesn't come off with the sensor. And then I'll just install the new one. Hopefully I won't get a lot of oil out. I'm assuming I'm only going to get out what's in the head, so it shouldn't be very much. All right, so it is not impossible. It's just highly unpleasant. I did not get any when I pulled out my part. I'll flip it around here. When I pulled out my part. All right, so it's just in a really difficult spot. I did get the part out. It turns out that the 2 screws are a Torx E8. It took me, I was out on the net trying to figure out what these were. I couldn't tell the size. I ended up going and buying a whole compendium of little tools trying to get it out. What I ended up with, worked for me finally, was I had a 1/4 inch drive with a E8 deep well, but the upper screw is so close to that metallic round thing that this won't work. Nor can you get an E8 short on there with the ratchet on it. It's again too tall. So I had to go to an E8 Torx short, and then I went and I bought a cap, which goes, from a 1/4 to a 1/4 cap. So that went into the back. Just one second. And I had tried a couple different extensions, etc. So that got me just enough where this would fit up and pop on. And then I used, this was my ultimate solution here, one second. So then I threw a box end on here like this, and I had just enough room to get a couple of turns on it. And then once it was loose enough, I was able to wiggle this guy back out off of the end of the screw, and then I just spun it out with my fingers up on top of there super duper slow until I could finally pull it out. So I'm going to put it back in the same way, but maybe a ratcheting box end would have been great. This just happened to be what I had, so it worked. But if I hadn't, I was going to try to go to one of these little specialty side guys and use that with a 1/4 inch drive. That was my next option, but I ended up not needing that. I just ended up using this. This is the old part. I did not need my dental pick to go in to the hole and look for the gasket, because the O-ring, I should say O-ring, because the O-ring came off with it, which was great. The original part has got a little red cap on the end of it. The new one had a different color cap. Verified the part number. This is the .02. Sorry, I can't focus on it very well. This was the .02, and the new part number is the .03. So now all I'm going to do is just reassemble. I'm going to cut the video at this point and stop it because there's no real reason to continue. It's just a reassemblement of what we already did. But yeah, the whole trick was this little short E8 Torx with a little cap on there, and then put a wrench on it and get it to spin enough so that you could then get your fingers on it and continue the rest of the way. I could not have pulled it all the way out with this. It would have backed into that metal piece. So just get it loose enough, take this off, finish pulling it off with your fingers, and you're good to go. So I'm going to do the reassembly, and then we'll see how the car runs, and I'll clear the error codes, and we'll see what happens. All right, one little addendum. Everything went back together really easily, with the exception of, bizarrely, on the new one, this is the old part I'm just using to demonstrate. There's this little retaining clip that slides on like this up in there to, hold the wire harness on. And I could not get it back on with my fingers, so I had to use an extremely long needle nose pliers to finally get it up in there and push that thing back on. But I just couldn't get it with my fingers. It was too tight up in there. So a long needle nose pliers like this will help you get that clip on in the end. All right, so everything's back together. We'll start her up and see how she runs. Hopefully we got everything back and everything will be great. And again, these videos are just to try to help out other people. Sometimes it's just really aggravating when you're trying to repair something and nobody will tell you, where the part goes. They'll give you these, everything's $1,000. And sometimes with a little bit of research, maybe something like this will just help out some other people. Besides, if I need to do it again, it helps me remember what I did before. All right, so here we go. Yep, now sounds right. Perfect. I'm gonna take it out for a test drive. Sure it'll be great. Thanks again, cheers. Yeah, now we're talking. Ooh, it sounds exactly like it's supposed to. Test drive.